My fiancée demanded I give her parents shares in my company as a wedding gift, so I refused quietly, and what I exposed ended her family's illusion of power. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. When I met Jenna, she had an effortless charm and sharp ambition. I was drawn to her confidence, believing I'd found a partner who understood the grind. But early on, she scoffed at my long hours and called my hustle obsessive. I laughed it off, thinking she just wanted time together. Looking back, those weren't jokes, they were warning signs. My attorney friend Olivia raised an eyebrow, but I brushed it aside. 6 months into dating, Jenna invited me to dinner with her parents. They asked me bluntly how much I earned, what assets I owned, and how serious I was about providing. I smiled politely, dodging their questions, but the vibe was undeniable. They weren't curious, they were sizing me up. Jenna later laughed, calling it just old school concern. Olivia again warned me they're not asking about love, they're asking about leverage. It started small. Jenna mentioned how her parents dreamed of owning just a slice of a tech company. Then came the hypothetical, wouldn't it be meaningful if you gifted them shares as part of our union? I laughed, but her eyes didn't. Olivia warned me again, that's not tradition, it's a transaction. Still, I chalked it up to family pride. I didn't see the chessboard forming until it was nearly checkmate. Soon, Jenna's mother began dropping hints we'd love to be more involved in Aaron's vision. Her father suggested meeting my board. I hadn't invited them. When I asked Jenna, she shrugged. They're just excited. It felt orchestrated, not organic, Olivia said. They're positioning themselves as stakeholders. I started feeling cornered, but told myself I was being paranoid. I didn't want to believe my fiancé was playing puppet master behind my back. Jenna booked a private dinner to talk business over wine. She pitched it like a merger my company. Her family's legacy. It's symbolic, she said. An honor to them. My stomach twisted. I said no. She leaned in, smiled, and whispered, then maybe we're not aligned long term. I blinked. That was her first clear threat. Olivia's voice echoed in my mind. Leverage wears a pretty face until it's snapped shut. The pressure escalated. Jenna's dad sent over a draft contract, an informal gesture, outlining the share transfer. I hadn't agreed to anything. Jenna downplayed it. He's just excited. My chest tightened. Olivia reviewed it and said bluntly, they're locking you in. I confronted Jenna, asking why this was so important. She snapped, because it shows commitment. That word commitment had become currency in her hands. I started to see the engagement ring as a contract, not love. A week before the engagement party, Jenna delivered an ultimatum: include my parents on the cap table, or I'll reconsider walking down the aisle. My pulse pounded. I asked, is this a wedding or a buyout? She called me dramatic. Olivia looked at me across her desk and said, you either draw a line now or spend your life negotiating your worth. That night, I stared at the guest list, feeling like I didn't belong on it. I asked Jenna to meet at my office, neutral ground. As she sat across from me, I handed her a folder. Prenup terms, no equity transfers. She scanned it, lips tightening. So this is your final answer? I nodded. You don't trust me, she said. I don't trust pressure dressed as love. I replied. She stood, slow and cold. Then there's no wedding. I didn't stop her. That silence was my loudest boundary yet. The next morning, I found the engagement ring on my kitchen counter. No note, no goodbye. My chest was heavy, but also calm. Olivia called and said, that was strength, not loss. Still, I expected backlash. Instead, I got silence. Jenna went dark. No calls, no texts. I thought maybe she understood, respected the boundary. I was wrong. That silence was just the beginning of her next move, not the end of the story. 2 days later, mutual friends began calling, confused, awkward. Did you really kick her out over money? Jenna had started talking. She framed it as a betrayal of trust, said I humiliated her. I stayed silent at first, unsure how to respond. Olivia urged me to prepare. She's not grieving, she's strategizing. I checked Jenna's socials, curated sadness, quotes about greed and pride. I knew then her silence wasn't retreat. It was the sound of sharpening knives. By the weekend, I was uninvited from our own engagement party. Friends split, some ghosted. Others messaged fake support. Jenna told them I'd turned controlling, that I refused to let her have a voice in our future. Olivia suggested I release a public statement, but I hesitated. Don't fight with mud, she said, but don't let them throw it alone. I realized silence was dignity, but sometimes, clarity needs a voice. The reckoning had begun. I posted a short factual update. We've ended the engagement over misaligned values. No further comment. Within hours, I received DMs, some hostile, others curious. Olivia reviewed a draft thread I considered posting, timelines, screenshots, receipts. Wait, she advised, let her overplay first. The restraint burned, but I knew if I led with proof too early, I'd look petty. This wasn't about revenge, it was about protecting the truth until it mattered most. Jenna resurfaced at a charity gala we were both scheduled to attend. She hadn't withdrawn. I arrived to find her surrounded by mutual contacts, playing the wounded ex. She wore the engagement ring again. When asked, she said, we're just taking space. He'll come around. Olivia spotted it first. She's reframing the narrative before you can. I smiled politely, said nothing, but something inside me snapped. This wasn't over. She was rewriting our ending without consent. Later that night, I got a call from a client. Jenna had contacted them. She said she was still part of the company's future, and hinted at legal changes coming. I felt a wave of nausea. Olivia sprang into action, demanding every email be documented. Jenna hadn't just lied, she was leveraging the illusion of involvement to undermine me. This wasn't heartbreak, it was a hostile campaign, and now I had no choice but to counter. We filed a cease and desist. Jenna's response, a lawyered-up letter claiming she had expectations of equity based on verbal assurances, false but dangerous, Olivia warned. If she finds one text that looks like consent, she'll twist it. I spent a weekend combing messages. We found one, me joking, maybe I should just give them a share to shut them up. Out of context, it looked damning. I stared at it, realizing how weaponized words can become. Olivia dug deeper. We found another message. Jenna's dad had texted, thanks for the verbal agreement, and I'd reply, that wasn't a yes. It was subtle but clear. Olivia built a timeline, texts, emails, call logs. She cross-referenced everything. We prepped a response not just to deny but to dismantle. No more defense, she said. We're going proactive. This wasn't just about clearing my name, it was about making sure she couldn't muddy it again. We compiled everything into a private Google Drive, shared only with legal counsel and key stakeholders. Olivia sent a soft warning to Jenna's team reminding them of defamation laws. Jenna responded by doubling down online, making vague allusions to betrayal and legal rights, but she didn't name me, not directly. We stayed quiet, let her stir the pot. Public sympathy was turning, people weren't sure what to believe, we just needed one irrefutable moment. That moment came unexpectedly. Jenna's cousin messaged me, "I don't like what she's doing. I've seen the texts." Turns out, Jenna had bragged in a group chat, "I'll guilt him into giving my parents equity, he's soft." Screenshots attached, Olivia verified metadata. This wasn't hearsay, it was gold. We added it to the dossier, time-stamped, unedited. This wasn't just exoneration, it was exposure. The game changed that night, from defense to decisive strike. We shared the full timeline with Jenna's consent text, her cousin's messages, and our documentation with a select group of mutuals who had sided with her. No commentary, just facts. Reactions were swift: shock, silence, unread messages, and one friend replying, "I'm so sorry, I didn't know." Olivia smiled. We were flipping the script. Jenna hadn't expected quiet clarity. That silence she once used now echoed against her. The damage she tried to weaponize was ricocheting back. Jenna's social posts stopped. 4 days, nothing. Then came a vague note: "I'm taking time to reflect. Not everyone is who they seem." Some took it as grace, but Olivia and I knew this was damage control. Her cousin confirmed. Jenna was furious. She's trying to spin it as a misunderstanding, but the receipts were circulating quietly. She couldn't unring the bell. The narrative she built was now a trap one she walked into alone. A former mutual friend forwarded me a voice memo Jenna had sent weeks earlier, drunk, angry, saying, "He thinks this company makes him untouchable. Wait till my parents have a piece of it." Olivia played it twice, stone-faced. It wasn't admissible in court, but it added context. Her intent was always conquest. We added it to the dossier, not for revenge, but for pattern. She wasn't just hurt, she had plotted a financial ambush. A tech blogger reached out. "I've heard whispers about a Fiancée equity scandal." Want to comment? I hesitated. Olivia said, "If it breaks without context, you'll be buried." We offered limited background, no names. The article framed it neutrally: entrepreneur faces pressure over equity from Fiancée's family. It exploded. Comments poured in. Some saw me as protective, others called me paranoid. But now the world was watching. Jenna couldn't weaponize shadows anymore. Jenna's final move came quietly: a LinkedIn post about misplaced trust and building futures alone. It was cryptic, polished, performative, but one comment shattered the illusion. Her cousin posted, "You mean manipulation disguised as love?" It gained traction fast. People began sharing screenshots, piecing timelines. Olivia smiled grimly. Sometimes, the truth needs no microphone, just friction. Jenna tried to delete the post, but the internet had already archived it. Her credibility crumbled by her own hand. One of Jenna's former coworkers DM'd me. She pulled something similar with her ex, promised him partnership, then ghosted. He shared emails she sent back then, eerily familiar language. Olivia archived them with the rest. The pattern was undeniable now. This wasn't an isolated clash, it was a method. We didn't need to publish a takedown. The web of truth was forming around her, strand by strand. Jenna wasn't misunderstood. She was consistent and exposed. My company's investor relations head called. "We're getting questions about the engagement fallout." I braced for bad news. Instead, he said, "You handled it cleanly. Stay steady." The board reviewed our legal file. One partner said, "Smart man." Most would have caved. That meant more than I expected. Olivia nodded. "You didn't just save your company, you redefined your boundaries for them too." For once, silence wasn't avoidance. It was clarity earned through fire. Jenna's parents emailed me directly, cold, businesslike. "We believe there's been a misunderstanding. We remain open to future collaboration." I didn't reply. Olivia drafted a formal response: "No interest in further discussions." We included the text where I clearly declined any equity offer. They went quiet. No apology, no accountability, just silence. That email was an olive branch. It was damage control. And by not replying, I finally closed the door they kept nudging open. An anonymous tip landed in Olivia Hess' inbox: an internal memo from Jenna's father's company. It mentioned a missed investment opportunity due to personal entanglement. Someone inside was distancing. Olivia said, "They're cleaning house." The same man who once tried to draft my cap table was now erasing connections. I smiled, not out of spite, but closure. The empire Jenna tried to build on manipulation was dissolving, not from attack, but from within. Collapse needs no push. Final twist came quietly. Jenna changed her last name on all platforms, removed every trace of me, and posted a soft rebrand: New Beginnings. Lessons learned. It was an exit, not an apology, but it meant she was done fighting. Olivia said, "That's your win." Not a confession, not a retraction, but surrender through silence. The chaos she unleashed ended with a whisper: no grand finale, just absence. And in that void, he's finally returned. Looking back, the signs were always there, just dressed in charm and ambition. Jenna didn't love me, she loved what I could represent. Olivia once said, "The hardest betrayals come wrapped in future plans." She was right. I wanted partnership, she wanted ownership. I learned that love and leverage can't coexist. Protecting my business wasn't selfish, it was survival. The engagement didn't fail because I lacked trust, it failed because I finally started trusting myself more. I stopped explaining my choices. The silence from others hurt, but clarity has fewer friends. Olivia reminded me, peace isn't earned by being liked, it's earned by protecting what matters. I held that close. The company stands, stronger than ever. I've restructured, added clauses, removed sentiment from contracts, but I've kept compassion. Not every lesson needs to scar. Some just need to stick. Jenna taught me more than any business seminar ever could. Never barter your boundaries. The engagement was cancelled, the chaos quieted. And my business remained mine, untouched, unbroken. I finalized Olivia's promotion to legal counsel. She stood beside me through it all. Jenna, she's vanished from my networks. No lawsuits, no whispers, just silence. I used to dread that void. Now it's where I breathe. I hosted a launch for our new product. Friends returned. Handshakes replaced doubts. The applause wasn't for the app. It was for surviving, for standing firm. Now, I don't see the engagement as a failure, it was a firewall. A test I passed by choosing truth over performance. Jenna's chapter is closed. I've redrafted my shareholder agreements, set new vetting policies, and even mentor young founders on emotional boundaries. Olivia calls it risk management of the heart. If it's love isn't about sacrifice, it's about respect. My company isn't just tech. It's proof that surviving manipulation doesn't make you hard, it makes you whole. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.